He left our guy like this. Carlos Ulberg annihilated Dominick Reyes in the first round, just another tally for his first round knockouts, and Reyes made the mistake that many others have previously. Running at Carlos Ulberg is the worst way to fight this guy, but so many of them do it. He's just way too fast, man. A speedy counter striker with one-punch knockout potential. You gotta stay away and try to point fight him, or you gotta try to wrestle. Wrestling is obviously the optimal strategy, but Reyes doesn't wrestle. And Olberg is getting better at it, right? Olberg's progression is going to make any sort of wrestling game plan be more difficult to succeed with in the future. I still think someone like Ankalaev can win through that strategy, but there has to be like this feeling of frustration to fight this guy because he's so tricky at range. It's hard to actually land strikes there. Perhaps some leg kicks and stuff, but he's an excellent point fighter. Like, he is willing to point fight for 5 rounds straight, but he's also capable of a knockout with even a sliver of an opening. Reyes didn't give him just a sliver though, he gave him an entire window to punch through, making it not really much of a fight. And Reyes throughout was just trying to find his openings. He was constantly roaming at distance, constantly feinted to create an opening for himself, but Olberg's reaction was to take a step away. He wanted to see if Reyes would engage even further. Would he step into the line of sight? But again, Reyes continues the feints, stepping on the outside the lead foot to get Olberg to do something. I think he was trying to bait out those counters, but the reason why they were never fired out there was because Olberg already measured his range. He's confident in how far the opponent has to move for him to precisely land his counter shots. And Reyes' trivial feints were not enough to draw those out. His feints were simple and way too obvious to trick Olberg. Olberg was establishing his range. He bolted in that right straight to the body at one point, but he was patiently waiting for Reyes to make an advancing step, which he did once prior to the knockout. And you see how ready Olberg was to counter him. His eyes just like lit up as soon as Reyes moved forward, coil in a stance, ready to fire out a counter. But Reyes sensed the danger and moved away. He retracted his steps, roamed at distance for like a few seconds, and then just gave his chin on a platter. That should have told Reyes right there, hey, pump the brakes. Pump the brakes. Let's not do this. And he still did it. He ran into the counter shot, but although defensively minded. So his move was very confusing here. Look at what he does. So you know he's defensively minded by picking up the right guard and not fully committing with the left straight. Half extension, half committed. Didn't really try to punch Olberg, honestly. There's a slight retraction of the arm halfway through his step. It was as if he was second guessing himself. Then extends his arm forward again, but palm open. He didn't throw a punch. He was trying to block. But you see Olberg's jab reach through the inside of the extended arm, making that right guard completely useless. Perhaps like midway through, he knew he made a mistake by moving forward like that, and then perhaps try to readjust somehow to not get knocked out, but he gave Olberg all the openings that he needed. Just lanced him in the face of that jab, the impact causing a whiplash, which creates a clear opening for his right straight, but he had to rotate across his body for it, so torquing the punch and just blast Dominick Reyes into oblivion. Yo, Reyes tried to do the Undertaker sit-up, but Olberg had to counter that too. 2 more super necessary shots, and this just ended Reyes' resurgence. Man, that fight was so easy for Olberg. Made that look like a breeze, man. Dude, he should have just tried to make it count. He should have just thrown something crazy if he was going to do that. At least give yourself a puncher's chance, right? He didn't even throw a proper punch. But man, that was a detrimental approach from Reyes. I was hoping he wasn't going to fight like that, but I had a feeling he was going to. Because realistically thinking about it, what could have Reyes have done differently? Like, what would have been the optimal game plan? Rush at the very beginning? That's not going to work. I guess point fighting for 5 rounds would have been the most CTE avoiding game plan. Like, at least he doesn't get knocked out. He will lose 5 rounds of a point fight. That was probably the best way to fight this. I was not too confident in Reyes' abilities, but I thought perhaps his experience in the 4th and 5th rounds could have shined some sort of opportunity for him. And I thought perhaps he could have mixed in some wrestling just to offset Olberg, but he played the distance game and ran headfirst into the counter striker and got knocked out. Clear cut win for Olberg, and I think he should get a title shot. Man, I did not want to see Dominick Reyes get knocked out like that. I was hoping he was going to perform. I was hoping he was going to amount to some successful offense and not get done in the first like that. Title shot opportunity right there. I think that was deserving enough. He beat Jan Blachowicz. Now he beat Dominick Reyes. Yuri Prochazka is fighting Khalil Roundtree, and perhaps that could switch it up, but I just don't think so, man. Yuri's got multiple title shots. Khalil Roundtree already got a title shot not too long ago. Olberg's a new talent. He's an unfamiliar opponent for both Ankalaev and Pereira. Now, him fighting for a title probably wouldn't be the most exciting fight, based off the fact that Unk and Pereira would absolutely not rush this guy. They will kickbox with him at distance, with Ankalaev mixing in his takedowns, of course, but that was as definitive of a win that you can ask for. Obliterate Dominick Reyes with ease, and I prefer Olberg fighting for the belt over Yuri or Roundtree. So let's do it. Carlos Olberg versus the winner of Magomed Ankalaev versus Alex Pereira 2. I don't know if he beats either of them. I think Ankalaev has a greater chance. obviously because he can wrestle. And I think a fight with Alex actually would be pretty interesting. A technical kickboxing match. Now that would naturally favor Alex, but I would not count out Olberg even in that sort of fight. He has Adesanya in his corner who would be of great help, and the guy's a really good fighter. I think I would favor Ankalaev and Alex against him, but I think he's somewhat on a similar level as like a Yuri Prochazka, but he probably beats Yuri, honestly. Yuri is just way too aggressive. That fighting style will fit perfectly for an Olberg highlight reel knockout. I believe stylistically that is the toughest matchup for Yuri Prochazka. Precise counter-strikers, and I don't believe Rakic was that. He's not as good as Olberg and Alex. But that's just my opinion. There's some pretty interesting foreseeable matchups for Olberg, and honestly, I think he could do pretty well in all of them, except against Ankalaev because of the wrestling. Alex, Yuri, and Roundtree I think are all winnable matchups, especially if Alex is washed. Prime Alex, probably not, but I don't know if he's at his best anymore. Yuri and Roundtree I think are too wild and too aggressive, and I think Olberg shines in those sort of matchups, but we'll see. A few interesting fun fights in the light heavyweight division, but the rest of the card was pretty decent. Jimmy Crute defeating Ivan Ursulant with a camel clutch, one with a straight up pro wrestling move. That has to go down as one of the best submissions of the year, right? Definitely a nominee for me. Jack Jenkins with a pretty good decision win against Ramon Tavares, who missed featherweight after bantamweight, and he might get cut for that. The grappling sequences are pretty nice, especially when Jenkins kicked out the leg against the fence for a quick rear naked choke transition. He took a low blow but quickly returned to action, did not allow that to deter him whatsoever. Reestablished his rhythm, eventually landed the body kick that hurt Ramon Tavares, and ultimately just put together an amazing performance. And then Neil Magny submitted Jake Matthews in the third round. I might make a whole video on this because it changed everything we knew about the referee's ability to retract the stoppage. He stopped the fight at the end of the first round, but then took it back, continued the fight, and Neil Magny eventually rallied to a win in the third. Took him down and got the Darce choke. I've never seen a fight where both fighters got submitted. Although stopping the fight at the first round was definitely a mistake. I prefer a referee to walk a mistake back like that instead of just stopping the fight and then they have to get into a rematch or something. And Magny succeeded as the gatekeeper. The gate has been kept. Then Tom Nolan defeated Charlie Campbell with a first round submission after a chaotic back and forth, but these guys were swinging heavy, and Tom Nolan got injured, but still landed a crushing back kick to the body, took the fight to the ground, and submitted him with a rear naked choke, which is the first submission win of his entire career. That was one of my best picks of all time. I picked Tom Nolan by submission, and it being the first of his career was pretty cool, but man, that was a fun fight. Navajo Sterling and Adolfo Bellato was whatever fight. Sterling cruised to a decision. Cam Roston knocked out Andre Petrosky with a sort of a check left hook. There wasn't much leverage in the punch, and he didn't generate much power with it, but it was enough to floor Petrosky, and that's his second win in a span of like a month, I think. Great knockout. Jamie Malarkey defeated Rolando Bedoya. Not the greatest fight in the world or anything. Bedoya now has 4 losses in a row, and he's probably going to get cut. Close fight, though. That has to be the most Malarkey's ever shot takedowns in a fight, man. He was spamming takedowns in every round. And Bedoya didn't really do much in the first 2, but not that great of a fight, honestly. Colby Thickness defeated Josias Musasa by a unanimous decision. This looked like a UFC 1 type of fight, just a mid-off of one-dimensional fighters. Colby Thickness was the grappler. Musasa was the striker. The guy had non-existent grappling skill. He was throwing punches from bottom full mount. That was his defense. Colby Thickness legitimately has to have some of the worst striking I've ever seen in the UFC. But he's a pretty solid grappler with no power in his ground and pound. I felt like he hit him 100 times and did no damage at all. Musasa didn't even have a scratch on his face after getting punched like 100 times. But I think that low blow definitely had an impact on this. That was a pretty bad low blow. I could have seen a point deduction possibly, but it was the same referee that walked back the Jake Matthews stoppage. And then Michelle Montague just put Luana Carolina in a grappling clinic. Very easy, dominant win. Very easy and dominant win. Then Brano Pericic knocked out Alicia Ellison in the first round with ground and pound. There wasn't a lot of shots, but it was enough to put Ellison out for what it seemed like minutes after the fight. That was a pretty devastating knockout. And with that win, I would not be surprised if Brano makes it into the top 15 of the heavyweight division, man. He actually might be a pretty decent talent, but that is always the expectation with every new heavyweight. We're just hoping and coping that there'll be something special. And then Alexia Thainera defeated Loma Lukbunmi by a decision. Very strong fighter, quite athletic, decently well-rounded, but used her grappling to stifle Loma. Pretty easy, straightforward win for Alexia Thainera. I honestly think she could beat a lot of the ranked fighters. I'm quite surprised they haven't given her any opportunity to do so, but someone ranked should definitely be her next fight, so I hope you guys enjoyed the video. What'd you guys think of the Ulberg versus Reyes fight, and how would you skill Ulberg to the best of the weight class? Do you think he beats the best guys, performs well against them, or he's just a notch below? And I hope you guys enjoyed the breakdown, and if you guys did, make sure to give the video a like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next video.